Hello everyone, I welcome you all to today's topic Decodified session. Today we are going to talk about NATO as NATO nations sign accession protocol for Sweden and Finland. We are going to talk about this particular topic in this following sequence. We are going to go into the details of the news. Thereafter, the key points related to NATO. And then we will discuss why any country whatsoever joins NATO, following with the practice questions to conclude our sessions with. Right? But before that, I would like you all to know about the Mains A 2022 program, wherein you can get help for polity, essay, public administration and ethics to improve your score in Mains 2022. You have to check the details over here and do apply soon to avail the early bird discount. Right? Moving on with the topic now. Why it is in news? The 30 NATO allies signed off the accession protocols for Sweden and Finland on Tuesday, sending the membership bids of the two nations to the alliance capitals for legislative approvals. So, Sweden and Finland are about to join NATO. The procedure is going on right now. Fine. But what is NATO should be the question that we all have to ask ourselves before we move any further. So first thing first, we are going to answer the same. NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It is a military alliance established by North Atlantic Treaty, which is also known as Washington Treaty, which was signed in 1949 April by the United States, Canada, and several Western European nations to provide collective security against the then Soviet Union. So this was the era of Cold War. Although I'm not going to go much into the details of the same, but yes, NATO was solely made to counter the Soviet Union. Fine. Now who all are the member states? There are currently 30 member states of NATO. Its original members were Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United Kingdom, and of course the United States. And thereafter, the original signatories were joined by Greece and Turkey in 1952, West Germany in 1955, and thereafter Germany got unified, and in 1990 it became Germany, whole soul Germany. Right? Spain joined in 1982 and Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland in 1999. Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia and Slovenia joined NATO in 2004. Albania and Croatia joined it in 2009 and Montenegro joined in 2017, while North Macedonia joined in 2020 itself. France withdrew from the Integrated Military Command of NATO in 1966, but it did remain the member of the organization, and thereafter in 2009 France has resumed its position in NATO's military command as well. Fine. And the headquarters of NATO are in Brussels, Belgium. Now how NATO came into being? We are going to understand it now. After World War II, 1945, Western Europe was economically exhausted and militarily weak. The Western allies had rapidly and drastically reduced their armies at the end of the war. And because of the reduction in army, the security was at stake. In 1948, the United States launched the Marshall Plan, which infused massive amounts of economic aid to the countries of Western and Southern Europe in the condition that they cooperate with each other and engage in joint planning to hasten their mutual recovery after the setback of Second World War. Right? So US infused capital into the European nations to get them overcome the damages they have had because of the Second World War. Fine. As for the military recovery, under the Brussels Treaty, of 1948, the United Kingdom, France and the Low Countries are what? Belgium, the Netherlands and the Luxembourg concluded a collective defense agreement called Western European Union. So they came together after the US aid was infused and formed a Western European Union. Who all formed it? United Kingdom, France and the Low Countries, which are Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg. Fine. So it was soon recognized, however, that a more formidable alliance would be required to provide an adequate military counterweight to the Soviets. So what realization came in was that Western European Union, this one, was not adequate and a further powerful alliance was required to ensure that they could counter the Soviet Union. So in March 1948, following a virtual communist coup, DTET is what? It is a sudden force to change political scenario, right? So that was it in the Czechoslovakia in February. The three governments began discussions on a multilateral collective defense scheme that would enhance Western security and promote democratic values. So because there was a coup and these countries supported democracy, so to prevent democracy from going down, they further realized the need of something as powerful to counter such situations, right? So these discussions were eventually joined by France, the Low Countries and Norway in April 1949, which resulted in North Atlantic Treaty, which resulted further in the constitution of NATO itself. Fine. Now why Finland and Sweden want to join NATO? They actually want to join NATO for these reasons. First one is security reason, next one is the position that would be strengthened, right? So NATO will give protection and military response to the member nations if any member of the organization comes under attack. This is the security reason. NATO works on the principle of one for all, right, and all for one. If any member of the NATO is attacked by a non-NATO member, it is considered as an attack on the entire NATO as an organization. So all of the states that are part of NATO are then bound to participate in the act of violence and save or secure the other member, right? Further, it is going to strengthen the position. Finland's geographical location plays in its favor, as once it becomes a member, the length of the borders Russia shares with NATO would double, and it would also strengthen the alliance's position in the Baltic Sea. Now let me take you to the map and I want you to notice the position of Finland. This is Russia and here is Finland, the green one. Look at the border it shares with Russia. So if this becomes NATO country, the border with Russia, whatever border today NATO countries share collectively with Russia, it will be doubled just because of Finland joining in NATO. Fine. And the Sweden, as far as is concerned, is a country in Northern Europe on the Scandinavian peninsula. It borders Norway to the west, Finland to the northeast, and Baltic Sea and Gulf of Bothnia to the south and east. This country is also going to join NATO. Fine. Now another important fact that Finland and Sweden are going to join NATO and how it is going to actually be good for the NATO itself is that during G7 there was a call for unity by all of these Western countries who are primarily part of NATO, right? So the war, the aggression that Russia has shown, which Russian politicians and in fact the Russian president himself, the aggression that Russia was showing, the Russian president himself was actually speculating that the Western unity won't come into play, that is NATO won't come into play here. Reason was, of course, the fact that Ukraine was not part of NATO is also an obvious fact, but why Western countries would not do much and in fact this aggression would lead to decline of Western unity is what Russia was speculating, right? And why so? Because US was going to support Ukraine throughout, but it could not do much. This is also because of the Western Europe's dependence on Russia for gas, grains and various other resources. Right? Fine. So this was the case, but if Sweden and Finland join NATO, the Western unity and relevance of the NATO organization will further be strengthened, right? That more and more countries are coming to join in NATO, even though Russia was trying to disband the organization or hamper the unity of the organization. So relevance of NATO gets further strengthened. People's belief or countries' belief in NATO gets further strengthened if more and more countries are willing to join it, right? So here's your prelims practice question. Which country is not a member of NATO? From amongst these, your options are A. Romania, B. Bulgaria, C. the United Kingdom and D. Ukraine, right? I hope you'll be able to get it right, and you shall be putting in your answers in the comment box below. And the mains practice question for today is evaluate the relevance of NATO in the present day geopolitics. You have to answer this question in 150 words and send in to us on WhatsApp to get it reviewed.